Okay, morning or afternoon to everyone. So hopefully you're all here for risk-based site monitoring. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, then I want to get a little bit of information from you. I've been in clinical research for quite some time, 4 decades actually. Started out in academia as a coordinator, transitioned to industry and was a monitor, study manager, site selection specialist, and quality roles in a variety of things until landing about in 2012, 2013 as an independent consultant specializing in training. So that's kind of my quick history. I just want to go through what our objectives are for today. We're going to take a look at this whole idea of risk-based decision-making in the clinical research model and how that impacts our risk-based monitoring. Okay, when this was first presented, people were like just getting really excited and freaked out about this because they're saying, oh, risk-based, does that mean that we're not looking at everything? And, you know, what does that all mean? It's just a smarter way of looking at clinical research and how to work smarter, how to manage our resources better. And we'll see that as we go through this afternoon's class. Okay, so we're going to look at where risk-based decision-making fits into the clinical quality system. We don't want to jeopardize quality at the expense of, you know, doing something less, shall we say. We want to make sure that we're smarter about how we're working. We're going to identify risk for a project related to monitoring, and, you know, the specific is the specific goal of the today's class. And identify components to include in building the project profile risk score, how we go about that, and apply risk factors to various study decisions. That would include the monitoring plan, site assignments, and the frequency of the visits. Okay, so we come to this point here where we say that, you know, we want to see where the risk-based decision-making fits into the clinical quality system. Now, as you're working in your companies, each company is a little bit different. Some may apply the risk-based model to some of their projects. Some apply it to all of their projects. So again, it may be project, you know, specific in terms of how people are adapting to this and how people are moving forward. Okay, so take a look at what we are looking at right now in terms of, well, not necessarily in terms of the pandemic, because that has really kind of thrown a monkey wrench into things, but in terms of the general climate in terms of clinical research, how the cost is just skyrocketing, the time involved, and so on. So the cost of clinical development and limitations on the resource that can be made available is something that we want to take a look at, right? We have development of deadlines, pressure from investors, and other factors determining the project deadlines. All right, you know, we're given, as monitors, we are told, okay, we have all these milestones. We need, you know, when is the first patient in? We have a milestone for that. We have other particular milestones that we are meeting, and a lot of that is driven by external forces, shall we say. Okay, we have the fragmentation of roles into many niche players, and it's often without clear distribution of the tasks or coordinated organization, each with its own priorities, risks, and business environment. Okay, this is also reflected in piecemeal implementation of technology with fragmented, unconnected, and poorly standardized solutions. Globalization of clinical trials, complicating the regulatory business and scientific medical environment and patient population within which they operate. So risk aversion, society and its institutions, both the public and private, is increasingly risk averse, often with little appreciation of the actual or relative risk of different activities, leading to imbalanced or disproportionate risk mitigation. Stifling of innovation by restrictive business practices, preconceived ideas, incorrect perceptions, leading to a failure to evolve processes and resistance to the implementation and acceptance of new approaches or technologies. For example, application and adoption of a single model to the management of all trials, which is neither appropriate nor effective. For example, you know, in the old days, and I say the old days when I was like monitoring, there were some companies I worked for where they had a metric that, okay, you're on this particular protocol, we need you to go to the site once a month. And it was kind of, whether you need to or not, you're going once a month. There wasn't a lot of thought put into that. Really what we should be looking at, well, how much enrollment do they have? You have a site, let's say I had 3 sites with the same study. And if one site had enrolled 20 subjects, another one had enrolled 1, well, clearly, I need to go to the one that had 20 subjects more often than I do for the one if we're thinking logically. But with this model, it was like, okay, no, you go once a month, blah, 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 and that's it. So it wasn't really well thought out in terms of the needs. When is your first visit to a site? You know, now it's very typical to say that, well, okay, it's 1 week or maybe 2 weeks after the first subject's enrolled at that site, then you make that visit. Back in the old days, shall we say, or prior to this idea of risk-based monitoring, we wouldn't necessarily have that model. Okay, you might have the model to go out, you know, for your first visit at a certain time. But then all the subsequent visits were like by rote, like every 4 weeks, every 6 weeks, where we're trying to be smarter now and kind of gear that towards enrollment, gear it towards the needs rather than just one size fits all is really what we're getting at here. Okay.